preoccupy you wastefully, and stop your creativity. So we need to learn how to ride the wave, because anxiety will show up for the rest of your life. It is a part of who we are. It is a part of our makeup. When we recognize our thought patterns or our thinking traps, we can challenge those thinking traps and start to participate in prevention and reduction, building our psychological muscle. I guess the good news is anxiety is changeable and adaptable, and with some simple awareness and good practices, we can really use it to our advantage. So let's explore 9 kinds of thinking traps or patterns. And what I want you to do as we move through these patterns is note the ones that make sense to you, that you go, oh yeah, that's me all over. I do that regularly. I do that in my life. Or that one doesn't relate to me. That's okay too. So just make a note as you go through. In fact, I'll be sending you, Carrie will send you a document with all of these listed on it after we finish our webinar today. So this all or nothing thinking is also called black and white thinking. It's actually when we only look at situations in terms of extremes. So things are either good or bad, or a success or a failure. It tells us things like, if I'm not perfect, I've failed, or either I do it right or I don't do it at all. But in reality, most events actually call for a more moderate explanation. So I always call it sort of living in the gray, spending time in the gray. You know, for example, if you miss one assignment in a series, does that mean that you fail the entire course? You know, you don't. It doesn't. You just get caught up in it. But you can also complete the next assignment and make stuff happen. So all or nothing thinking is a pretty popular one. It's one that I very much relate to. Overgeneralizing. This is when we use words like always or never to describe situations or events. We see a pattern based upon one event, and then we begin to overly, broadly draw conclusions. It's a thinking trap. And this type of thinking is not helpful because it does not take all situations into account. For example, sometimes we make mistakes, but we don't always make mistakes. And when we start to think that we always make mistakes, that is definitely a thinking trap. So that's overgeneralizing. Next one is called mental filter. This happens when we only pay attention to the bad things that happen, but we ignore all the good things. It prevents us from looking at all aspects of a situation and drawing a more balanced conclusion or a reasoned way of thinking. It sounds like, I left out 3 questions, I'm going to fail the test, when in fact there's 40 questions on the test. That's mental filter. Disqualifying the positive. Sounds a little bit actually like the mental filter, but it's when we discount the good things that have happened or that we've done for some reason or another and say, that doesn't count. Yeah, I passed that before. Yeah, I did a great thing before, but that doesn't mean this time is going to be good. So you've studied and you're prepared, and yet you sit in the chair and anxiety shows up to tell you that, yeah, but if you finished it that fast, you must have done something wrong, or you left out an answer that wasn't right, or yeah, you couldn't have known it. So it's this disqualifying of the positive that can really be the trap that we fall into in the moment. This is one I do. Jumping to conclusions. There are 2 key types of jumping to conclusions. One is mind reading, where we imagine we know what other people are thinking. And this trap happens when we believe that we know what other people are thinking and we assume that they're thinking the worst of us. The problem is nobody can read minds. So we don't really know what other people are thinking. We just make an assumption about that. And what that voice sounds like is everyone thinks I'm stupid, or this company doesn't like me. The other part of jumping to conclusions is fortune telling, where we're predicting the future. And what we often do is predict that things will turn out, what do you think? Badly. But in reality, we can't predict the future because we don't have a magic ball. We're not fortune tellers. And it sounds like, I know I'll mess this up, or I'll never be able to pass this exam. And sometimes these actually go together. Did you notice the I'll never in that sentence? It kind of connects to the next one, which I'll share with you. So that's jumping to conclusions. Magnification, or catastrophizing, it's also sometimes called, or my favorite word, awfulizing. It's when we blow things out of proportion, or we inappropriately shrink something to make it seem less important. This is when we imagine that the worst possible thing is about to happen, and we predict that we won't be able to cope with the outcome. So it's that awfulizing feeling, like it's the end of the world, right? And often the imagined worst case scenario usually never happens. And if it did, we're actually most likely to be able to cope with it. Or sometimes we minimize our mistakes or the mistakes of others. It sounds like this: if I fail this, I'm going to get fired. I'm never going to advance. I can never learn this. Or I'm going to look like such an idiot. We also sometimes refer to this as overestimating danger. This is actually when we believe that something that is unlikely to happen is actually right around the corner. It's not hard to see how this type of thinking can actually maintain your anxiety. Like, how can you not feel scared if you think that you could have a heart attack at any time? And sometimes I've heard people talk about their physical symptoms, like of their chest beating fast, or the sweatiness, or that's kind of real physiological symptoms that people experience as, I'm going to die. So that's that overestimating danger. Anxiety can really do that to us. So that is in and of itself a kind of thinking trap, or a negative thinking pattern. Yes. I don't think I know anybody who doesn't fall into this one. This is when you tell yourself how you should, must, or ought to feel and behave. However, this is actually not how you actually feel or behave. Like, you use these critical words to try to make yourself feel guilty, or like you've already failed. The result often of this one is that you're constantly anxious and disappointed with yourself. And are you disappointed with the people around you? Because when you start using the shouldas to describe other people around you, you often feel really frustrated by what you're experiencing. And it can sound like this: I should be able to stop worrying about tests. Well, you could if you were a computer, I think. Or, I shouldn't have to be tested to do this work. Can you sense how you'd be really frustrated by that, right? So that's using critical words. Labeling. That's when we assign labels to ourselves or other people. And sometimes we really talk to ourselves in mean ways, and we use a single negative word to describe ourselves. This kind of thinking is not only unhelpful, it's really unfair. And it sets us up to have a self-image that is not useful to us. And we're way too complex to be summed up in a single word. So what does that sound like? I'm a loser. I'm completely useless. I think the counter is useful. That's good. Or they're such an idiot. I think when we use labels to take care of people, it's the way our brains work, but it's really important to counter that really easy thinking trap. So that concludes the thinking traps or the unhelpful thinking patterns. I'm wondering if you could ask yourself this. Did you recognize your thinking traps? Do you now have a better idea of what they sound like? This next section is a review of some questions that we can use to challenge unhelpful thinking or negative self-talk. How's everybody doing out there? I'm going to assume you're doing well. Breaking the cycle of anxiety at any point actually helps it loosen its grip on you. And it allows you to recover and get back to what's important. So having some questions that you can use to sort of shake up those thoughts or those unhelpful thinking styles can be really valuable. So I'm going to go over each of these questions. There's about 10 or 12. And you will also receive these questions on a handout that Carrie will share with you as well. So you can ask, am I falling into a thinking trap? You can name that thinking trap. Am I catastrophizing? Am I overestimating danger? Is this black and white thinking? And what you're doing immediately is breaking the hold that the thought has on you. And you can ask yourself, what's the evidence that this thought is true? When we use reasoned thinking, we can call for evidence as opposed to a thought, letting the thought be true, right? You can also ask what's the evidence that this thought is not true? Have I actually confused a thought with a fact? Facts are objective, whereas thoughts can be really subjective. This is a good one as well. It helps us gain perspective. So what would I tell a friend if he or she had the same thought? If I told a friend of mine that I thought I was stupid, they would probably counter that and challenge that thought and demonstrate examples to me in my life that says, hey, you're not. You have a great brain. You're really smart. You do this, you do that, you do the other thing. So sometimes calling on the voice of a friend in your head can really help us challenge that thought. And if you told a friend out loud about the thought you were having, what would he or she say about it? What would they say about it? Am I 100% sure that failure will happen? Do you see what we're doing there? We're starting to bring in the objective consideration. We're drawing back and getting out of that thinking trap. How many times have I failed before? Often people, the thinking trap that traps us is that always and never one. I always fail. I'm never good at tests. I've been terrible at school. Well, that's not true. When you start to dig a little deeper, I guarantee you everyone here has passed an exam in high school. Is blank so important that my future depends upon it? Maybe it is. But what's the worst thing that can happen? When we dig into the worst thing that can happen with an objective sense of fact, we can usually stop that trap. Is my judgment actually based on the way I feel instead of facts? Am I actually confusing possibility with certainty? Sometimes things might be possible, but is it likely? And this is my favorite, the one I carry in my hat, the one I use all the time. Is this a hassle or a horror? Because anxiety, its job is to make you escape danger. Its job is to make you react and respond and avoid. But when we ask the question, is this a hassle or a horror? It's like, yeah, I'm feeling anxious about what's happening, but I'm still doing okay. I'm sleeping at night. I'm eating. I'm not too stressed out. And if it gets into the zone of being worse than a hassle, you can seek help. So if it did happen, what could I do to cope or handle it? So that's a little bit of planning. That's using your brain to the best of its ability to help you figure out worst case scenario, not stay stuck in it. What I'm going to advise you to do is when you get this handout, just pick 3 or 4 or 5 of your favorite questions and maybe write them on a piece of paper that you can carry with you until you get used to challenging your own thoughts on your own. Often the biggest challenge around all of this is actually practicing. You know, we all need a little nudge to bring a more balanced way of thinking into our lives. So little cue cards, little helpful fold outs. I have one in my wallet that I carry. And honestly, my go-to question has become, is this a hassle or a horror? Because it can instantly snap me out of my worst case scenario thinking. I think because this is new to all of us, it might be good to go through an example. So am I basing my judgment on the way I feel instead of the facts? Like the answer to that is I might feel like I'm going to fail, but there is no evidence. Where am I now? I'm sorry, guys. Yes, I have fallen into it. I think I went ahead too one. Look at me. There I am. Am I falling into a thinking trap? Let's start this again. I'm going to show you an example now. So this is an example that will help you to challenge your negative thinking. So imagine this scenario. You have an important test tomorrow and you've been feeling quite anxious about it. You might think something like, I'm going to fail that test tomorrow. To challenge this thought, you can actually ask yourself the following question. Am I falling into a thinking trap? The answer might be, yes, I have fallen into a thinking trap. And it's fortune telling. I'm predicting things will turn out badly even before the event has taken place. But I still think I'm going to fail. So how can you counter that? Well, am I basing my judgment on the way I feel instead of the facts? Yeah. I might feel like I'm going to fail, but there's no evidence to support it. I'm prepared for the test, and I've passed other tests before. Am I 100% sure that I will fail? No, I'm not. But what if I do this time? Well, what's the worst thing that could happen? If the worst thing did happen, what could I do to cope with it? An answer might be, the worst thing that could happen is I do fail the test. It'll be disappointing, but it won't be the end of the world. I can go for extra help to find out what went wrong, and I can ask my supervisor if there's anything I can do to improve my mark or get help in the areas which I found difficult. So you can always seek help, and we all do that from time to time in our lives, and there is nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's a brave act. Now I'm going to talk about some realistic thinking tips that you can use. Coping statements. Actually trying to come up with some statements that remind you about how you can cope with a situation is a really valuable thing that you can do ahead of time. This is another thing that you could have on the back of that piece of paper or that little tiny cue card in your life. Some good coping statements that I sort of just made up. You know, you can make up your own. I made up my own. Is if I get anxious, I'll try some calm breathing. Actually, returning to the breath is one of the quickest ways to calm the body, because when you get anxious, it's a physiological response. The sweaty palms, the heavy breathing, the heart palpitations, those things are all physiological responses. And when you take oxygen in, you're reminding your body to slow down and that everything is okay. So the breath is a big tool that you have in your box that you can always go to. It doesn't have to be written on a piece of paper. But even sometimes I think when we get anxious, we've got to remind ourselves that it's there for us. Another coping statement, I just need to do my best. I can't ask any more of myself. Sometimes we think that people are looking at us and they can tell, but people can't tell when you're feeling anxious. Or this has happened before and I know how to handle it. Or my anxiety won't last forever. In fact, anxiety can't last forever. I would suggest that you try coming up with some statements that can really work for you in your future, because it's pretty useful. So, positive self statements. Instead of saying, I will fail, you can say something like, I know I can do this. A lot of people have done a lot of research around the value in positive statements and positive visuals. You can tell yourself that everyone experiences anxiety and you can handle it. Or you're not a loser if you have trouble with a test. Lots of people struggle with tests. I think regularly practicing being really kind to yourself and saying positive things about yourself rather than being overly self-critical is a really important antidote to this story that anxiety is going to tell you. Like, I'm strong enough to do this test. I'm going to do my best. So positive self-statements. Actually, once you've looked at the evidence or you've recognized that you've fallen into a thinking trap, coming up with a more balanced thought based on facts, not feelings, is something that you can do. So, for example, when you are facing a test, a more balanced thought could be, there's a chance that I won't pass the test tomorrow, but not passing a test doesn't mean that I'm a failure. And even if I don't pass the test, it doesn't mean I will never pass it, because I've passed many tests before. And I would go on to say, I'm prepared. I've spent the last number of weeks reviewing the material. I'm taking care of myself. Like, balancing those negative thoughts will quiet them. You can't send them away. You can't get rid of them. That's the notion of being able to say, I should not be worrying about this. It's natural to worry. In this next section, what I want to do is actually get you to play along with me and practice some techniques to help you relieve the symptoms of tension that come with anxiety. So, get comfy. What I'm actually going to do is read through this slide, and then we're going to practice this kind of breathing for 3 rounds. And I want you to bear in mind that stress is a result actually of a lack of oxygen. So focusing and breathing and optimizing oxygen can really make a difference in the moment. It's the one thing you can call upon that you always got. So I'll read the slide so you know what you're going to be in for, okay? Start by exhaling all of the air in your lungs. Excuse me while I get a sip of water. You're going to exhale slowly for a few seconds. Keep exhaling until you feel your lungs are completely empty. And then breathe in through your nose to a count of 8 or so. Keep your shoulders down and relaxed. Focus on filling your rib cage. As you feel it expand, start to push down into your abdomen. So the idea is to push the oxygen down into your belly. And you'll even probably feel your lower abdomen, and then your back expands. When you're full up, begin to exhale slowly, and it's focusing your breathing by shaping your lips into an ooh position. And like you could imagine that you're actually blowing out a candle. So you ready? Let's get comfy. Let those shoulders drop. Maybe your hands are on your desk. You don't need to watch anything right now. Maybe your hands are in your lap. Just let yourself be for the next 30 seconds to a minute while we practice this belly breathing. Start by exhaling all of the air out of your lungs. Exhale slowly, slowly, slowly for a few seconds. Let it go. Keep exhaling until you feel completely empty. Breathe in through your nose to a count of 8. Keep those shoulders relaxed and focus on filling up your rib cage. And as you feel it expand, you're starting to push oxygen down into your belly. This happens naturally. You should feel your lower body expand, and near the end, you might even feel your back as your diaphragm lowers. Now exhale slowly, focusing your breathing by shaping your lips into that ooh position, as if you're blowing out a candle. Let it go. Exhale, empty your lungs, and breathe in through your nose again. Keep those shoulders down and relaxed, filling up your rib cage, expanding your belly, your lower body, and your full. Exhale slowly with those pursed lips blowing out that candle. Exhale. Let the breath go. Inhale, filling up your lungs. Start with the top of your chest, and as your chest fills, pushing that air down into your belly, into your lower body. And when you're full, exhale slowly, focusing on your breathing by shaping your lips into that ooh position, as if you're blowing out a candle. Now take a moment to feel the effects of breath. Actually, focusing on this type of breathing will help you focus your mind, as well as work to reoxygenate your blood and re-energize your body. I find that you can also use a positive statement that you've developed to ease your mind as you go along with this breathing. There's some really lovely techniques out there around breathing. There's something called square breathing. Belly breathing is one of my favorite. You can do it anywhere. You can do it on a bus. You can do it in your car as you're driving along. It doesn't take a lot of effort, but what it definitely takes is practice. So that's why I wanted to make sure I went through it with you once. What I often hear is people get handed a bunch of techniques, but if they've never practiced it, they won't try it. So that's why I thought it was important for us to try one today. Okay, we're going to do one more. And it's called a body check. What a body check is basically we're going to run the full of your body, looking for tension, just like we're kind of, we're investigators. And when you feel tension, I'm going to ask you to tell your muscles to relax. So we'll try this one too. Remember, this is your hour. So I want to be here with you, making this happen in your body so you feel what the effects of this looks like. So you're probably already sitting someplace comfortable. If you like, you can close your eyes or cast your eyes down. Take a nice breath and just relax. I want you to focus on the muscles in your feet and notice if there's any tension. Tell the muscles in your feet they can relax. Now move to your ankles. They can relax. Move up to your calves, your thighs, and your buttocks, letting go. Tell each group of muscles to relax. Work slowly, being sure to scout out any tension that might be hiding in obscure places. Move up into your lower back, your belly, your chest, and let it go. Your lower arms, your upper arms, your back, neck, and shoulders. Let it go. Now into your face. Maybe your jaw is tight and held. Give your body permission to let it go. I want you to pretend you're tracking an electric current through your body. And it's escaping. All of that energy is escaping through your fingertips and your scalp. Sit and feel the experience of letting tension go. Is everybody okay out there? I gave you two options for exercises because some people love the physical sensation of moving down through the body, and some people love just calling in the breath. So that's it. That's all you have to do. You don't have to do anything else now. I'm not going to make you do any more activities or body checks. So finally, I just want to talk about, in this sort of series of tips to help relieve stress, exercise can really make a difference. And I know I'm probably preaching to the converted because so many people use exercise as a way to help them de-stress these days. And this is more of kind of like a lifestyle change than it is in the moment technique. But it can really help reduce general stress and, as you probably know, improve your health. Doing some kind of form of exercise actually, give me a second, guys. So when we do some kind of form of exercise that elevates our heart rate, it can be something that works in the long run to reduce our stress in general. I think what's important is it has to be something you enjoy and something you could do at least 2 or 3 times a week. And then there's a lot of research out there that tells us about the multitude of benefits around exercising regularly. Okay, I'm going to play you a little video. Mindfulness is probably something that most of you are familiar with, but I want to say it's more than about just sitting cross-legged by a river or in a field or in some soft, magical place. It's how we notice our thinking and our feelings and our actions without judgment. Mindfulness actually encourages kindness and compassion towards ourselves and others, and it helps us take perspective. It reminds us that we have choices about how we choose to think and feel, and that we can do something. And they say that in as little as 5 to 10 minutes a day, it can improve the symptoms of anxiety. And there's a ton of research out there about this. I'll talk about some apps that you guys can use, or if you're not already using them, after we watch this video. Oops, let's do that first. And this.
There's a story, usually attributed to the Native American tradition, which illuminates different ways of paying attention. An elder, talking to a child, says, "I have 2 wolves fighting in my heart. One wolf is fearful, vengeful, envious, resentful, and deceitful. The other wolf is compassionate, loving, generous, truthful, and peaceful." The child asks, "Which wolf will win the fight?" The elder responds, "The one I feed." That doesn't mean we try to deny or hurt or kill the angry wolf. If we did that, we'd end up in a long battle, all the while somehow making that wolf more powerful through our hostility and fear. Hating that wolf sucks the strength right out of us. Instead, we calmly pay attention to the angry wolf and let go of believing they have the answers. If we can do that, they end up lying down next to us, no longer an enemy. We help strengthen the kind and loving wolf, giving it nourishment and support so that we can follow it. That peaceful wolf can become our steady companion and show us the way through all kinds of different life experiences, Restful or chaotic, enjoyable or disappointing experiences may come and go, but we can have a guide with us through it all. This is what mindfulness can help you do. Mindfulness allows us to see our thoughts and feelings as they are beginning. It's very powerful to know what we're feeling as we're feeling it, know what we're thinking as we're thinking it. With mindfulness, we can choose what will strengthen and bring into action, and we can choose what we will gently let go of. We don't have to be at the mercy of old habits or old ways of thinking or old ways of being. We are empowered. It just takes practice.
I love that video. There are some really good apps out there in the world. I don't know if you guys are familiar with some, but I just thought I would name 4 that I've used and that I've recommended in my practice. One is Headspace. It has a free 10-day trial period where you practice every day for 10 minutes. I would recommend that. I think it's excellent. Another one is called Calm. Buddhify is another one. And I think Stop, Breathe, and Think is free. And I've used all 4 of these, and I found them helpful for not only myself, but for people I work with as well. Okay. Here's just some reminders for, test day or coming up to test day that might be helpful, because reducing anxiety, especially around testing, is really possible. They say that being well prepared is the best way to reduce test-taking anxiety. Spacing out your studying over a few days or a few weeks and continually reviewing the material is really good. That's how the mind learns. I know some people write out the material, which is very helpful in terms of retaining the information. But I would caution you against cramming, because cramming doesn't work. It kind of worked in high school, but oh boy, we sometimes meet some really stressed out kids because of cramming, and we recommend not cramming at all. Trying to maintain a positive attitude while you're preparing for the test and during the test is really helpful. And do you remember those coping statements or those reasoned statements that we can use to balance our thinking? They're really good. Take care of the basics. Like, it's really important to get a good night's sleep, or even a good week of sleep. Eat a nutritious breakfast beforehand. That regular exercise can really make a difference in turning down the volume on stress. If you have the option to show up early, show up early. Sometimes, even if we're worried about being late, it can take the information that we know so well out of our brains. Use your breath when you get there. Stay relaxed. If you find yourself getting nervous, take a few breaths to slowly relax yourself, and then you can get back to the work, get back to the test. Read the directions slowly and carefully. Read them again if you have to. If you don't understand the directions of the test and you have an opportunity, you can ask for clarification, and maybe you just need to move on and skip something and then come back to it. Actually, skimming through the test for some people really works well, so you have a good idea of how you have to pace yourself. It can also cause you to feel a little tense, but remember to use your breath to take you back down and start writing. Some people say it's good that they write down important facts or definitions or keywords in the margins so you don't worry about forgetting things. Of course, I'm not sure you can do all of these things in your testing environment, but using these techniques will help. Sometimes it helps to do the simple questions first to help you build up your confidence for the harder ones. And a biggie is, don't worry about how fast other people are finishing. Just stay on your own mat, as they say in yoga. Concentrate on your own test. People do things at different paces. We're human, we have different ways of doing things. And if you don't know a question, you can skip it for the time being. You can come back to it later. And remember, you don't have to get every question right to do well on a test most times. And if you focus on the question at hand, you can probably stop your mind from wandering onto other things. And when your mind does wander, you can use those coping statements to help. It's completely normal to feel nervous before a test. This kind of anxiety can actually be motivating. It can help keep us focused and moving forward. And I want you to remember that everyone feels anxious. You got to remind yourself that the test is only a test. It's not the end of your life. Tell yourself that you're going to do your best on the test, and that'll be enough. Use those positive statements. Maybe they sound a little dorky to you, or a little bit, oh my God, to whatever. You know what? Telling yourself you can do something works. Because you don't want anxiety to drive the bus of your life and keep you from the things that are actually important to you. So that's it. Oops. My last slide. I just wanted to show you where I got some of the credits. Yes, thanks. I hope this has been useful for you today. I hope that you can be walking away with some tips, with some techniques, with some ways of helping you get through those difficult moments that anxiety shows up to present to you. But remember, thinking traps are thinking traps. When you challenge them, you can reduce the power of them. You can't send anxiety away. We all got it, but why don't you use it for the good? Thanks so much.